Hey guys, Red here again. This is my 6th battle report. This is a second game against the Kingdoms of Men with my Brotherhood. We played this game right after the last game I had in Battle Report 5. Pretty much the same list, if not identical, but we just replaced scenery and re-rolled scenario, but will look similar to the last one. So here's our setup and deployment. We rolled a 4 on the scenario chart, so that is pillage. There are actually 5 tokens on the board. You can only see 4 of them right now. One of them is in the forest on the right side of the board. It's kind of in the corner behind the forest, so can't really see it in this picture. Going left to right on deployment. On the far end of the table is my opponent's Kingdoms of Men. He's got a general on winged beast, a regiment of knights, horde of pole arms. Behind them on the hill is a troop of bowmen. Another regiment of knights. In the center of the board, he's got a wizard on a horse, and then another horde of polearms, another troop of bowmen, army standard bearer, and another regiment of knights. Left to right on my board, I have an exemplar redeemer with onyx ring, regiment of spears, regiment of the Forsaken Knights, Order of the Forsaken. The lions are the Order of the Abyssal Hunt Regiment, and they've got haste. The riderless horses that I have yet to finish are my Order of Redemption Knights, and they have crushing strength. Then another regiment of spears. Then I've got my general, which is an exemplar Forsaker with ensorcelled armor, so he's defense 6. So we roll for first turn, and I win the roll again. Normally when there's counters like this in Pillage or Kill and Pillage, I will let my opponent take the first turn even when I win the roll. And the thinking behind that is that I can grab one of the counters at the bottom of the last turn, since I have a lot of quick units. But I decided to change things up and go ahead and take the first turn. The scenery, the terrain here worked out interesting to me, and I saw some ways that I might be able to take advantage of it. And so I wanted to get the first move so that instead of me having to funnel through where he wants me, I'm going to try to do that to him. I'm focusing on the left side of the board, well, middle and left. There's only the one counter on the right side, so I did another heavy deployment on the left side of the board. And he saw what I was doing, so that's why he's got a lot of units on the left side as well, and only a little bit on the right hand side. I'm hoping my general can take out the bowman right away and get behind him, or hold up those knights. He's got defense 6, so if he charges me in the forest, he's going to be hindered and lose his thunderous charge, and with defense 6 I think I can stand up to that just fine. On the left side of the board, I'm in position to be able to charge him next turn if he doesn't charge me. If he does charge me, again, he's going to be hindered going through the forest. My Order of the Abyssal Hunt, I think I said they have haste. They actually have the Potion of the Caterpillar, so they have Pathfinder. So I have no problem charging out of the forest, but he will definitely have a problem charging into the forest. So I'm fairly happy with my positioning here. However, he does hold his line pretty well. He decides not to really move at all except for his knights on the right side. But his bow troops and his wizard managed to do a couple wounds and wavered both of my spear regiments. So that's a bummer for me. I really wanted to bring them up to support the charges of my knights. And oh, and I forgot I have a Forsaken Beast next to the spears over there. And he's got regeneration. So that's a cause for concern. I either need to hold my line, pull back a little bit, or get really aggressive and try to take advantage of the initiative here. Having them wavered on the first turn, they're not crucial units, but they can really protect flanks and support a charge. So I really need them. Honestly, I don't like them. It's not a unit I think I would use, but I had the models for it, and it was a 1,500 point game, so I wasn't going to go with hordes or anything like that. But having said that, looking back, I probably would rather go with one horde instead of 2 regiments. Gives me more flexibility having the regiments, but I'm just not real big on them, and maybe it's just in how I use them and something I could learn better. But on 2,000 points, I use Martyr Hordes, and I really like those a lot. They are fearless, so they're either broken or they're fighting. They've got regen 6, and as a horde, they have a high nerve. So these spears were just a little lackluster for me. So he does a couple wounds on the spears and wavers them, and that's the end of round 1. So here's a picture of the end of round 2. You'll notice things look quite different. I made a gutsy move, and I took a risk, and the Abyssal Hunt and the Order of Forsaken that I had kind of in the middle of the board there in that forest, I did a double charge on his Pole Arms Horde. I wanted to take them out and ensure that I would take them out and be able to reposition and face his knights, which I successfully did, but it was still too risky a move because one charge from those knights and both those units were gone for me. So his Polearms Horde costs, I think, 165 points, whereas my Order of the Forsaken and Order of the Abyssal Hunt with items was probably more like 450 points. So not a very good trade-off there. That was too gutsy a move, really. If I was going to aggressively charge like that, I should have just hit both of the knights. But my fear in doing that was, yes, I would hit the knights and then they would be disordered and not have Thunder's Charge, but I probably don't stand a good chance of taking out the regiment of knights if I split up my charge like that, and then my flank is open to the Polearms Horde. And 50 attacks with Crushing Strength 1 is not something I'm keen on. So in hindsight, I probably should have done a double charge against one of the knights with both those units. I would have had a good chance of taking out one regiment of knights and then reposition to face the horde, and then I would have probably lost one of my units to the horde, but then I would have still had the other unit in place. So live and learn. That was a gutsy move, which just cost a little too much, a little too early in the game. On the left side of the board, I had moved through the forest with my Redeemer. He's just on the very edge there, the unpainted model. He's just got a black primer on him. So he charged me with his General and Winged Beast and just managed a wound or two, which I'm not worried about. And I'm there to add some wounds to the knights or take out those bows. My spearmen were wavered, so now they're just repositioning. I faced to the left there just in case his general decided to fly the full 20 inches and try to get around behind me. And if he did that, I would have got a flank charge on him. So that kept him from making that kind of movement, which is good. And I move up with my Forsaken Beast. I think I'm just outside of charge range here, or I'm just inside of it. I can't remember exactly. I think I moved just inside of it. Again, I've got my spears there, so if he charges me, I've got some support from my Exemplar and from the spears. So we'll see what happens there. In the middle of the board, I'm aggressive here as well. I charge my knights into his horde, and they do a good job. I land several wounds. I think probably 12 or 13 wounds, maybe even 14 wounds. I just roll well. They have 20 attacks. And against this horde, they're hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. So, yeah, I think I did about 14 wounds there. And didn't roll high enough to break them, but I did waver them, so I'm perfectly fine with that. On the right side, my general charges his knights. I decide to go ahead and take the charge there and take away their Thunderous Charge. And I managed to do, I think, 4 or 5 wounds, which is a good hit. And so with defense 6, him countercharging me without Thunderous Charge is not going to accomplish much. He charges his standard in as well. In his turn, he charged with his bows into the side of my knights because the horde is wavered, but they hit on 6s and wound on 5s, so he didn't manage any wounds there, which is great. So I still have my Thunderous Charge. The spearmen that were in the middle there that were wavered got taken out by his wizard. You can't see the wizard because it's behind that piece of terrain in the center, but he's got a fireball attack and took out the regiment. So here's round 3. More carnage happening here. He charges my Forsaken Beast with his knights on the far left. Actually, I should describe what happened with me first. So at the top of the turn, I take my Exemplar Redeemer and charge his bows and take them out, and I just advance. He had both his knights kind of holding the line back there, but because I killed them, I was able to advance and get out of his front arc so they can't see me. My Forsaken Beast, I went ahead and did a sidestep to the left, and it was just enough so that if his knights charge me, they're hindered and lose their Thunderous Charge again. My spears moved up to support the beast in case that happens. And then in his turn, he went ahead and took the charge anyway, might as well try to do some wounds there. He manages a couple. His general flies over and charges the spears, and they were already wounded from the shooting before, and he just needs a couple of wounds and rolls a good nerve check, and they're gone. So his other knights near the hill in the back turn to face my knights, who are going to be coming his way. Because in my turn, I charged the horde again and took them out. So after taking them out, I turn to the left, and I'm going to go support that side of the board because I'm kind of hurting over there now. His bows, again, they try their hand at melee, and it just doesn't work out. Even tripling attacks, they're hitting on 6s, wounding on 5s, and he doesn't manage a wound. So my knights are completely unafraid of his bowmen. My general charges his knights again, and I don't remember if I just rolled poorly or what exactly happened here. I'm only wounding on 4s at this point because I have Crushing 1, Thunderous Charge 2. So because he did a wound to me last turn, I wasn't able to have that benefit. So I think I did another wound or 2. Actually, I think I wavered them this turn, but they are headstrong, and he passed his headstrong roll. I really needed that to fail in order to take out that unit and hold that side of the board. So they passed that roll and charge my general and do a wound. So yeah, so we'll see. We'll keep duking it out over on this side of the board between my general and his knights, and we'll see what happens next turn. And here's the end of round 4. Things are not looking good for me here again. I thought things were going well. I was off to a good start by killing both of his hordes so quickly and getting rid of one of his knights here in this turn. I really needed my general to come through on the right side of the board. It's a bit much for one character to just go head-on with a regiment of knights like that. And things really take a turn for the worst for him on this turn. So I charge him again, do a wound or 2, but don't rout, don't waver. And now what is even worse is his wizard is moving over there to support the knights and gives them Bane Chant. So even though they're not going to have Thunderous Charge, now they have Crushing Strength, which is really going to start to break through my Ensorcelled Armor, my defense 6. So with that Bane Chant, he lands 4 or 5 wounds, I think, and winds up wavering my general, if I remember correctly. That might be next turn, but one of these turns he wavers the general, and now I'm really in trouble because he is not going to be disordered anymore. He's going to have his Thunderous Charge and the Bane Chant from the wizard. So that's going to knock my defense down to a 3. So that's not good for me there. I was really hoping he would take those knights out. It just wasn't in the dice. I rolled poorly on this last one when I really needed to roll well. So unfortunately, lose that side of the board. His knights stand their ground and are able to keep duking it out with the general. The knights that I had in the middle, my Order of Redemption, I continue to move to the left. I had charged his unit of knights, and again with 20 attacks hitting on 3s, and I think wounding on 3s. And I also charged into their rear with my Redeemer to add a few more wounds there, and it was enough to take them out, which is great. His bowmen finally break out of melee and decide to shoot, and I think they wound up doing a wound or 2, so not much, but more than they were accomplishing in combat. On the far left side, my beast, my poor beast, takes a double charge from the knights and the general in his flank, and so that is plenty to take him out. So I'm down to 3 items again on the board. I'm just horribly outnumbered. 2 are characters and then 1 regiment of knights. It's just not enough to do it. So I can get a few more kills in, hopefully, but I don't think I'm going to get too far with this. So here is round 5. Sorry that some of the pictures are a little bit blurry here. I was trying to take them quickly and not interrupt the flow of the game. So it's actually this round that my general gets wavered. Again, just going back and forth, exchanging blows with the knights on the right side. But this time I get wavered, so I know his demise is imminent at this point. But I'll hold him up for another turn. If I can survive, maybe last till the end of the game. I'm kind of close to the marker, which you can kind of see in the forest there. So I can at least contest that if I can just survive. In the center of the board, his bows hold and shoot again. I think this is the turn they actually managed to do a wound. So they're staying in the middle because in the last turn they can just kind of sidestep or move over to the center objective and hopefully do a few more wounds in the process. And then my knights are repositioning to get ready to charge either his general or his knights, and my redeemer gets in the face of the knights. The picture doesn't show this well, and the last one didn't show it either. The knights were actually slightly still in the forest. So I make a little bit of a mistake here in charging them with my redeemer. Again, I like getting the charge off against these knights to take away their thunderous charge and disorder them. But I know my redeemer is not going to be able to take them out on his own. So by charging into them, they're disordered. But when you countercharge, you are no longer disordered. Or, excuse me, you're disordered, but you cannot be hindered. So by doing that, disordering them just takes away the thunderous charge, but they still hit on 3s. Whereas if I hadn't charged them, but just sat in front of them, when they charge me, they're going to be hindered, which is -1 to hit, and they don't have thunderous charge. So that's a mistake on my part. He managed a wound or 2 maybe on them, but now they are just disordered, not hindered. And so in his turn, he charges with his general in my flank and his knights in my front. I'm an individual though, so he doesn't get to double his attacks on my flank. So he does some good wounds, but the redeemer has a 13-15 nerve, so I think he managed to do 6 or 7 wounds altogether, which is favorable for me. And he, I can't remember if he wavered or was just fine, but in either case, that's good for me because now his general is exposed to my knights charging in his flank, so I'll be able to take him out with my knights. And that's exactly what I do here in the 6th round. My knights charge into the flank of his general and take him out. That's 40 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on, I think, either 3s or 2s, because they have crushing strength in addition to their thunderous charge. His knights charge my redeemer again and manage to take him out, which is unfortunate, but at least now they're sitting there waiting to take a charge from my knights, so I stand a good chance to take them out. In the center of the board, again, his bow troops just stay put. And finally, on the right side, my general goes down. So he held a regiment of knights back on his own for 6 turns. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to take them out. The Exemplar Forsaker is a pretty strong character. He has 7 attacks, crushing 1, thunders 2, and with the ensorcelled armor, he's got defense 6. So he's pretty strong on his own, but he's really best at getting around with using his fly to get around and get flank charges or rear charges, and then he is just devastating. So going head on with the knights there, I think it was probably a 50-50 chance of who was going to win that fight, but it just wasn't in the dice this game. I think they have 8 or 9 wounds on them, and they're a 14-16 nerve. So I was close. He did a good job. And they're a 190-point unit. He's 170 points without the armor, 200 points with it, so it's a pretty even matchup. So it was a good little test to see what he's able to do head-on like that. If I needed to, I would do it again, but I would much prefer to use his fly and get around to a flank. And that's turn 6. And here's the end of turn 7. We kind of messed things up here. I don't know, we just weren't keeping good track of the rounds. We played another round or two. I don't know why. So we went a little bit overboard. I guess he was just giving me more of a chance than I really deserved. But this is really the end of the game, and if we knew it was the end of the game, we probably both would have moved a little bit differently and actually claimed some of the objectives. I said at the beginning of this that this was a pillage game. It's actually kill and pillage. So I've got one thing left on the board. I've got my Order of Redemption Knights. They are a pretty expensive unit. They're close to 300 points with the magic item. But he's got a regiment of knights, his bow troop, wizard on horse, and standard on horse. So if it was just a kill game, I'm guessing that would be, what, 260... 3 something. So it would probably be a draw. It would be less than a 200-point difference. But if we had moved the way we should have moved, knowing that this is the last turn, I would have grabbed an objective. His bow troops would have grabbed that middle one, and his knights would have gone over to the one on the right, which was in the forest. So he would have had 2 objectives to my 1, which would give him another 200-point increase. And he would have won the game. So really this is his win. Narrow margin on kill points, but he would have gotten it with the objectives. So I'm not quite sure what we were doing and not keeping track of things there. A couple final thoughts on this. I really like the Brotherhood list. I really like them at my 2,000 point list and what I've got on chosen there. At 1,500 points, I was just throwing stuff together and using models I had. And I would drop the Beast and I would drop the Spearman. The Beast is cool. He's kind of fun, but he's just not that great on his own. He needs to be a supporting charger or get flanks or something like that. He can be a bit of a roadblock with high defense and regeneration. But he's just not that great. He's got 8 attacks hitting on 4s, so on average he's only going to hit 4 times and maybe do 3 or 4 wounds. So for the points, I would rather have another unit of something rather than the Beast. As far as the Spearmen go, I've already talked about how I like the Martyrs more. And with infantry, it's a little bit tricky. A lot of my unit, well, the whole rest of my army are cavalry or flying units. So having infantry, it just kind of slows my whole line down if I'm trying to keep it all together. So they don't really work out well in that sense. I can use them sometimes to protect my flank, but if I'm trying to be really aggressive and move quickly across the board, then they're just left behind. So in my 2,000 point list, I use Martyr Hordes, and I use them sort of as a screening wall of infantry to advance with my Forsaken Knights, which are the Flying Knights, and I protect their flanks with my other Knights, the Order of Redemption and Abyssal Hunt. And that has worked out well for me. I also use the Recon troops. I really love those units. They're 100 points for a troop, and they are speed 9 with Nimble and Thunder's Charge, melee 4, defense 4. So for 100 points, they are a great chaff unit. Or sometimes they can get a charge or a flank off because of their speed and their nimble. So I've used them to screen my knights, and then the Martyr Hordes to just kind of advance my whole army across. And that has worked out well for me so far, but I'm only 4 or 5 games in with my Brotherhood, so I've still got a lot to learn. I'm still not really tempted to add any shooting to the army. I like the knights and the infantry options so much with the martyrs, and I really like the characters. I just like everything else so much. And if I was going to do shooting, I'd be tempted to go back to Kingdoms of Men and use rifles. The piercing 2 on those is really great. So other than that, they're pretty similar options. So again, if I'm going to do shooting, I might as well do Kingdoms of Men. But I like the Elite Knights, and I like the Martyrs. So at any rate, this is a fun game. Ended up closer than I thought it was because we played a round or 2 extra, more than we should have. But it was great to meet this guy. He's new to the area, and I've been posting on a forum of one of our game stores, and I've been having trouble finding other Kings of War players. So he moved to the area recently and saw my posts on the forum and just sent me a message and said, hey, you want to play Kings of War? And I was like, yes, finally, another Kings of War player. So it was nice to take a break from Universal Battle and be able to play face-to-face. He's a good guy, good opponent, and he's got a nice balanced list, and he used it well. So I'll look forward to more games with him. But that's it for this battle report. Thanks for watching.